The book you have chosen for us today is Be Less Zombie. What is being zombie?
Companies hang on to what makes them successful, and in the process, they are unable to remain successful in future. It encourages organizations to think about innovation as reinvention and boosting the level of life and creativity in the system. And the book was a great tool in helping me ask better questions to unlock better thinking from the team. How much of your revenue comes from things that didn't exist before? Are you measuring the right thing? That is rich learning territories.
Welcome to the Non-Fiction Book Club. I'm your host, John Bradshaw, and we've got a great show for you today. A big thank you to our Season 1 sponsor, Innate. Innate is the platform for financial advisors who want to spend less time on paperwork and more time helping their customers solve problems. A reminder to sign up to our newsletter at www.nonfictionbookclub.co.za to always be the first to hear about interviews like this one, book reviews, and get great discounts on every book we cover. And now for our show. It is my great privilege to welcome Vuyokazi Henda to the Non-Fiction Book Club. Welcome. Vuyo is the Chief Marketing Officer of the Spur Group, which looks after all kinds of brands, Rockamambas, John Dory, Doppio Zero, and of course, everyone's favorite family restaurant, the Spur. She narrowly escaped accountancy, using her business science degree to get a job at Unilever, working in marketing, and then in sales in the UK and in South Africa on some of the biggest brands and strategic pillars. She's also was elected as a Dalai Lama Fellow in 2020, involved in all sorts of things outside of her day job, and is a passionate advocate for the mentorship of women from marginalized backgrounds, and is a mentor in all kinds of things that hopefully we'll get into. Now, I heard Vuyo talk at an EVG marketing masterclass, and I just thought she was so thoughtful in how she thinks about leadership. I discovered later that she was a reader, and so we had to have her on the show. So a big welcome to you, Vuyo. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me, John. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. So the book you have chosen for us today is Be Less Zombie by Elvin. I hadn't read it before, so it was a great opportunity for me to read it and wrestle with it. Where were you on your journey when you came across Be Less Zombie?
So I came across Elvin Turner at a reinvention summit. We, as Spur Corp, have been on a journey of reinvention/innovation. And this is coming from a body of work from Dr. Nadia Zeshimbayeva. It's really exciting because basically it encourages organizations to think about innovation as reinvention and boosting the level of life and creativity in the system. So we went to Dublin earlier this year, and Elvin Turner was amongst a long list of illustrious speakers at the summit. Your Alex Osterwalders, Rita McGrath. And he came on stage, I think on day 2. I mean, Seth Godin also spoke, and he was quite unassuming, but my goodness, his talk really provoked me. He was pragmatic, but the questions he asked us to ask ourselves as the audience put a mirror that made me reflect on whether I was really being bold in my efforts to drive innovation in the organization that I'm in. And I then heard he had a book, and so I rushed to get it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a signed copy. And I immersed myself in the content, and it's not the easiest read, not in how it's written, but more in terms of the concepts and the frameworks. And I think the real magic is applying what he puts out in the book or posits in the book. So I was in a place of questioning whether I was really going max on my innovation ethos in the organization as a leader, but also driving the right decisions for the brands. And the book was a very practical way for me to self-reflect and assess where I was, and also a great tool in helping me ask better questions to unlock better thinking from the team.
I love that. And in preparation, I watched that talk. It's online.
Awesome.
So, great questions. We'll get to one of them later. I loved, he asked, what is the most important thing that your team is not currently working on?
I know, right?
I was like, oh, that is a cracking question.
I like questions.
So I love good questions. So the book is Be Less Zombie. I mean, I think it's worth us just bringing our listeners along a little bit. So what is being zombie that we need to be less of?
It's a very provocative title, and I've got a very visual mind. So I started to see all of us in our corporate where
As long as you weren't seeing specific co-workers.
not specific codes, but like being the Walking Dead. So the thesis Elvin puts forward is that companies hang on to what makes them successful, and in the process, they are unable to remain successful in future because they stick too much to what made them great today or what makes them great today and not what actually will help them be great tomorrow. So this fixation on efficiency and managing risk is his slow walk into zombification, where you become rigid and where your innovation starts to become ad hoc rather than being systemic, a discipline that is in your way of being as an organization. And he really puts forward that this is a risk because the world is changing so rapidly. And we see that companies that everyone thought would last forever meet their demise in what appears to be sudden ways because of this rigidity or zombification.
Yeah, and I think it's such a risk in what's worked so well.
Right.
We've had the discipline to stick to our knitting. We've built a great company, and so hard to say. So you mentioned that this was a period of self-assessment for you.
Yes.
How did you apply the thinking to some of that? Because you've got so many great brands that have succeeded by being who they are.
Yes.
How did you apply this thinking within your context?
Well, one of the most powerful things that he puts forward quite early on in the book is this idea of, are you measuring the right thing? And we know you measure what you treasure, right? And he also cautions a lot about innovation theater. So you can easily fool yourself into thinking you're innovating, but actually, is that innovation disruptive or is it incremental? And the one metric that he really put on the table that I found useful was this idea of how much of your revenue comes from things that didn't exist before. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so simple, but it's so powerful. Because then if you start to track the impact of new ideas on your top line or maybe bottom line, you can actually start to make a link between the level of innovation and the level of performance that the company is able to deliver. And that's not necessarily something we're tracking. So I did a study on one brand. I took the menu because we innovate menus quite frequently, and I did some analysis, and I was able to determine how much of the sales we were generating in that brand came from new menu items.
Okay.
Obviously, there are other dimensions of innovation, but I've been
I
fixated
think
on that.
that's a great.
Yes, I won't name the brand, but only 5% of the revenue the turnover we're getting from that brand was coming from new items. But now this gives me a starting point, right? First question, is that enough? No. How do we dial that up? Okay, do we double it? Do we triple it? But if we're going to double and triple it, then it sets out a very clear call to action for the menu committee and the recipe development process and the research and testing we're going to do. Where are the great menu items going to come from, and how can we start to invest in building infrastructure to turn that into a habit as opposed to something we do ad hoc?
I love it because it immediately will reveal a bunch of other, that it's not just the menu. There's a whole muscle memory of how to roll out new things. Are the incentives for the store right? Does it take more horsepower to get something new going? Of course it does. You need to change the incentives around that. And I think, especially with brands that have been around a long time, we forget how much sweat and tears it took to get that brand into customers' minds. So, if you take, let me use a silly example that, because I don't want you to give away any state secrets here, but, if the Spurs said, we want to start selling non-meat steaks as our lead thing, it's really going to take a lot of heavy lifting to shift how people think about their family meal. Okay, that's fascinating. So as you wrestle with this, you get the right metrics in place. How was that experienced by the organization? Is that something that they grabbed hold of, or was there some more nuanced reactions?
I think we're very open to trying new things, and that comes from the founding ethos that the business was started with. And that energy has been retained over time. So we're quite good with experimentation. So it's hard to say whether this approach is going to work because we're in the process of actually starting to apply it. But there is always interest and curiosity to try doing things differently if it's going to unlock growth. And I think it's driven partly because we are in a franchise system and business owners want anything that's going to help them deliver more growth for themselves as investors. So I think there hasn't really been resistance to thinking about innovation differently. We've set up a lot of infrastructure to drive this innovation culture.
Yeah.
That's something that Elvin also talks about in the book.
Yeah.
And people are very receptive to leading the experience. That's kind of the strategy that our CEO put forward when she joined. How do we lead the experience across the customer, across the franchisee, across the employee, across the investors as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think this is something really worth double clicking on for our listeners, because they might think of Spur as one thing.
Yes.
But of course, you've got hundreds of CEOs, right?
Yeah.
Right, that are at the branch or at the restaurant level that work. And so what do you see as you've been describing some benefits for innovation. I'm sure there's some challenges as well. Can you talk a little bit about that dynamic with having all these self-driven CEOs being your interface with customers?
Look, they keep me honest. They keep me on my toes. And I think it's one of the best training grounds for any marketer to, apply their skill is to work in franchising.
Yeah.
Because you have people who've invested their savings, their life savings actually, into a brand, who draw an income and, build their livelihoods around this, keeping you honest and accountable for the things that you do, and who are looking to you to continue to build the demand and the desirability of this brand with customers as they change over time, right? The consequence of franchising that I've experienced is that you're living in this constant tension. On the one hand, because the franchisees at the front line, many of our best ideas come from them. Example, on the Spur menu item, there's an item called on the Spur menu, there's an item called the Warrior Combo. That was a franchisee innovation. It's in our top listed items that sell. Customers love this. And this basically came from a franchisee observing that actually customers want a little bit of their favorite things on one plate, and the Warrior Combo was born. The play areas that you see today were also something that the franchisees contributed to. So I think in the beginning, the play zone was a little area that, made room for children to be in the restaurant space. But one of our franchisees in Bloom actually invested in building a mega play area, introduced modulars, and that's actually set up the restaurant format that you see today, in terms of play being a huge component and a huge draw card for families to come into the Spur brand. So on the one hand, all this amazing creativity and innovation comes in. It's also at the edges, right? They serve customers, they listen to customers, and they have the decision-making power. They own the store. They can quickly put something in place and test it and see it. And then as a franchisor, we can work with them, because we've also got franchise councils where we sit with our franchisees to harvest some of the best thinking, and we scale it, and we make that a repeatable model. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, it's franchising, which is about consistency and standards and making sure you operationally are excellent. So we've got operational managers that go to the stores and check that we are sticking to our knitting in terms of delivering a promise to the customer in a consistent way.
Yeah.
But now that, if you do too much of, can then stifle creativity. So on the one hand, you've got all this creativity and ingenuity. And on the other hand, you also have, this has to be delivered in a specific way so that it is recognizable, it's consistent. And on that end, you can get a lot of risk aversion. You can get a lot of concern that we're deviating from what works. And so there's this constant balancing act to say, how do we work with the pioneering energy, but also not become too rigid in our operational excellence that the other side isn't actually given room to thrive. So it's been fun for me because I have to think about the franchisee and the customer. Those are the two nodes that I serve. I can't think of a great idea that's going to cost the franchisee too much, but equally, I can't only think about the franchisee and deliver things that the customer won't love. But yeah.
No, and I love that tension between, hey, the consistent delivery that the customer wants, and the customer also benefits from the entrepreneurial energy, but these things pull against each other, and something that might be perfect for that store over there actually undermines the overall promise of the brand. I also have I spent a good part of my career as a marketing director in a franchise system as well. So I have tremendous respect for franchisees. That combination of passion and truth. You make a decision at head office, it's fine on average, but then like for specific stores, you get the passion and truth, and it's almost always a real truth from there. But I think there's also for me something with innovation in that franchisees are so innovative because they're there and they hate saying no to sales, right? So they do innovation. There's a resilience in the franchise system because they will react. Like if it was, I was joking about plant-based earlier, but if it was the case that suddenly South Africa had a big shift to plant-based, the franchisees would react much quicker than the big corporate system. Because a guy would come in and ask them, do you have a plant-based steak? And then the next day they would have one, right? Like it would solve it. And then later they would tell head office. So there's lots of resilience and lots of innovation adaptiveness if it fits within the structure.
Correct.
But my general observation of all organizations is that innovation that doesn't fit within the existing structure is very, very hard. And I think that's doubly hard where, if it became the case that actually the way people like to eat is now in 12-person restaurants, not in these big restaurants. And actually the winning QSR chains ended up being 12-person restaurants run with great efficiency.
Yeah.
That would be an extremely hard innovation to cope with because you've got these units of franchisees. So I think that's another one of the tensions that I see play out there.
Absolutely.
You said experimentation. The franchisees are great at experimentation.
Yeah.
This is something Elvin absolutely loves, is experiment. So has this resulted in a whole lot of experimentation? Do you guys feel like you're doing lots of experiments at the moment? What's your experience been of those?
It's the chapter, I think, that he calls the one chapter you have to read. And I think when I went through that chapter, he affirmed a lot of what we were doing. So unlike where I was before in FMCG, where our testing and experimentation was more in a controlled setting through research, survey, focus groups, you name it, walking into Spur Corp, our CEO has been a big advocate for us to test and market. And I have a great example of this. We were doing the work to rebrand Spur, and we'd gotten to a design of a new look restaurant. And our design partners present the direction of the design, and then they say, right, let's find a little warehouse somewhere and set up a fake restaurant just to see how it'll all come together. And Val, our CEO, was adamant. She was like, absolutely not. We're going to build an actual store. Yeah. We're going to revamp an actual restaurant. And we're going to see
Let's see it in real life.
Let's see how customers receive this. And this is one of the key things that Elvin conveys in this book is you want customers to have skin in the game. We can all say things like, oh, yes, I look at a picture, I'll buy that. But nothing is as instructional as actual behavior. Like this is what
they put their money in.
They put their money in, they vote with their wallets, they stay and they linger. And that is rich learning territory. So we built the store, and we're now at like 65 new look stores in the Spur brand because we did that first pilot and we learned firsthand. We did the research to check gross negatives, but nothing gave us conviction like building that first store and making it come alive and seeing how customers responded. And my goodness, have they embraced this new direction. And this look delivers double-digit growth. So versus previous designs, this look, any store that actually revamps has grown double-digit actually from taking on this
Yeah.
new CI. Yeah.
And I love that finding out, right? That's the advantage of being at scale like Spur. You can find out in one
Yeah.
store. If you're nervous, you can make it not in not in the waterfront, right? You can find a place where nobody's going to notice, but to find out in real life, and then also to avoid the error that Elvin talks about is 1,000 little experiments that aren't really proving anything, that never get scaled. That ability to know exactly, this is what we're trying to prove. We're trying to prove, do sales go up when we revamp the store? And then we have the plan for how to affect that rollout.
Absolutely. So now this is the way. We even some of the promotions we run, we had a really successful one in Rockamama's. It also
Love that brand.
Came from a franchisee, understanding that people are cash strapped. So it's the triple treat. So it's a 3-course offering on using the Rockamama's menu items. It was a promotion. It shoots the lights out in the one region, and we think, okay, let's make this a thing. We do a big nationwide promo. It's one of the best promotions for that brand. Now it's an actual menu thing that we've, invested behind, because it's a permanent fixture. People love it. They tweet about it. They, TikTok about it. They tell each other about it. And again, it's from this thinking of how do you do small experiments, but you actually test in real life? How do you use the learning to then build and scale and take it to the next level?
And lift it up, or such a role for leadership in driving and running that process. I think Elvin likes the term fearless leadership.
Yeah.
I've heard you use the phrase conscious leadership before. You want to talk a little bit about your approach to leadership and what you mean when you say conscious leadership?
Well, it's a big question. I have been a follower, of course, and in my career journey have had difficulties that made me reflect on the kind of leader I wanted to be when I got the opportunity to lead others. And I really felt like the kind of leadership that I wanted to see was lacking. Not necessarily where I work, but looking around the country, community, you name it. I just felt like leadership wasn't something that people were always intentional about. And the first thing for me was realizing that the first person you lead is yourself.
Yeah. And the hardest person to lead.
So I had to do a lot of work getting to understand myself, my why, what kind of contribution I wanted to make, my strengths, my weaknesses, and the kind of spaces that I wanted to have an impact in. And that really sparked a very, very rewarding journey of self-discovery, of learning at the feet of really amazing coaches and teachers, and also realizing that it's a never-ending journey. So I've done a lot of work to really embody the kind of leadership that I felt I would have wanted to see growing up.
Yeah.
Creating spaces where people can thrive, where people can be fully human, where they can bring their best gifts to bear, where we model an inclusivity that makes us stronger, where we can reside in an atmosphere that makes creativity and brilliant thinking the norm, where there's joy, where there's play, but there's also performance and there's excellence. And I think I'm starting to see that take shape in the team that I'm leading now. And we had a retreat with some of the senior leaders recently where we got to exchange what we called golden arrows, basically appreciating each other and expressing what we admire about one another. And that process really affirmed that some of these things, these ideals that I've been so hungry to see manifest, are starting to take shape in the development of the people that I lead as individuals, as people who work at Spur Corp, but as mothers, as community leaders, I started to see that that's actually taking place, and that's humbling, rewarding, and inspiring.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic, and I love how for you it starts with your own personal
Hmm.
journey. You talk about creating the space for your self discovery, and then creating the space in the team. You know, you were at Unilever, you were at Spur. That both feel like pretty full on jobs.
Oh, yes.
How do you create the space for yourself to do the work?
It felt like a non-negotiable for me, John. Like, I felt like if I didn't make space for this, I really wasn't going to survive. It was like opening capacity. I felt like in order for me to be able to show up for my work, this is part and parcel of me doing that. Like, it's not an and, it's like it's the foundation for anything that happens as my being. So I made the time. I think when you really want something, you stop making excuses. Honestly speaking, there's nothing that I really wanted that I made excuses about, like, doing or getting. If I needed to sleep late, I sleep late joyfully because I'm working towards something that I know I really want. If I needed to, go a far distance, if I needed to spend some money to go on a program, those things seem inconsequential versus the value that they create and the space and the new vistas of understanding they open up in me. So, in many ways, I didn't view it as a trade off, my work or no, in a development.
Yeah.
It was in a development so that my work can be better, smoother, so that my decisions can be wiser, that I can be more able to hold diverse teams and not fall apart and not,
Yeah.
burn out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's so fantastic. I love the tension that's almost there, and when you talk about the joy and play, and then the performance and excellence. So, are there specific behaviors in your team that are just not allowed, or that you ban? How do you get that balance between, hey, we want performance and excellence, but the way we're going to get that is by having a context of joy and play.
The first thing for me is making it safe for people to share their ideas.
Mm.
And that is about allowing people to express themselves even if it's imperfectly. Sometimes people are penalized because they're not eloquent, because their ideas are partially formed.
Mm.
What's been important to me was to make people feel like it's safe to say, I've been thinking about this, and talk it through with me.
Right.
And I've done that by also modeling it myself. So I think leaders also create permission for people to self-express by also modeling the behavior. So I'll frequently say, I'm processing this. I'm going to
Yes.
think, I'm going to talk out loud. It's not fully formed.
There's license to be
There's
wrong. There's license to
to be
disagree with your
wrong.
boss.
Yes, and I will invite it in by also doing it with my team. And I'll say, I haven't really thought this through, but walk with me. And we talk about things, and then they point something out. I'm like, oh, also taking some of their inputs in as well and listening. Because, like, again, we can easily do theater around this stuff and say, my door is always open, and, share your input. And then you don't, like, use it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we must use everything that our teams are giving as input, but where they've really given you something valuable, use it. Say, thank you. I didn't think of it like that. I'm going to actually apply this. Or actually, thank you, but I think I'm going to take a different direction. All of that makes it safe for people to share and to bring their best ideas forward and not sit with them. Because I think Elvin, in his reinvention talk on YouTube, he mentions that 80% of people's good ideas never get
Yes.
like expressed. And then he provokes with the question, how can we live in a zone where we're having the ideas that are conceivable, but we don't create the conditions for them
We
to
never pull
conceive?
them out.
We never pull them out. So how can you pull those ideas out from the ether that are really at the cusp of coming through if you are shutting down imperfectly expressed ideas, if you don't allow people to participate in things that are in process, if you siloed, if you, rigid in how you apply things? Like, you stifle
You stifle
you
it.
stifle the
And
life in the
you
system.
need creativity and truth to flow in every direction across power hierarchies in an
100%.
organization if you're going to
100%.
catch those ideas.
100%. So before drifting away from the question, yes, making it safe for people to express ideas. Also, I've invested a lot in creating rituals of connection and also being very clear on what good looks like what is the standard of excellence, and again, modeling it where I feel sometimes we tell people and we don't show. So showing it in how I put forward my work, and hopefully
This is what good looks like.
this is what
Yeah.
good looks like, and gently correcting and coaching people to understand why I make the choices that I make. Yeah, and just making sure that people are clear on what their contribution needs to be. Like, this is your area.
That clarity, yeah.
This is what you own. This is what I'm going to look to you for. And the one thing I don't really tolerate is a lack of integrity. And I don't think that's something anyone can correct. I think it's a fundamental issue, because I always say how you do the small things is how you do everything.
Yeah.
So I generally have a zero tolerance policy on people who fudge things, who trying to look good at the expense of truth. See, those kinds of behaviors I think are very destructive.
Yeah.
And they erode trust in a system where trust is very essential for us to actually be effective. Like, franchisees must trust us.
Yeah.
We must trust each other. There's a lot of work to do. People can't be hovering over your shoulder for everything. So I tend to be quite hard on integrity related issues, because I don't want those to take root, because they tend to spread. When you allow for that, it tends to
and
permeate everywhere.
exactly. Dishonesty poisons trust, completely breaks social safety, which breaks what you're trying to do. I do want to get on to the last question, but I got to ask, because I'm so curious, what is one of the rituals of connection? That sounds like really fun. Like, that sounds like there might be some good Doppio Zero coffee there or something.
Well, food is always involved because we're in the hospitality industry, but we've got something called First Wednesdays, where everyone gathers, and it's completely run by the team. Because I said to them, the culture actually is a byproduct of how we interact with each other. So I want to put this in your hands. What kind of atmosphere do you want to create? So every Wednesday we gather and they come up with an agenda. It's usually 90 to 120 minutes of activity. We do play. So we get given challenges. Some involve dancing.
Okay.
We get to know...
Coloring in the Spur pictures?
Oh, well, I'll add that to the list.
Okay.
We profile members of the team. We thank each other. So awards for specific things that people have done. So the people that are the mavericks that have, helped someone. So we do an award piece as well. And we share anything that we think will, inspire the team. So sometimes they're not able to be privy to everything that's happening in the business. We bring the business through in that forum so that people can see what we've done at the franchisee roadshow, or we also profile accomplishments that the team has had in their personal life. So one of the leaders in the team has done that 100-mile race overnight in the mountains.
Yeah.
And we got to hear from him about what that experience was like. And it was so profound because, I basically think he's a Marvel superhero, because who runs in the night in the mountains?
No, and it's very steep.
It's crazy. But he told us about the mental fortitude, his preparation, everything that went into that race, and, sharing that, experience with him from his storytelling, and even hearing how he crossed the finish line was so profound for the team and inspiring. And it's someone they see every day, and they maybe didn't know that this was something
they bring out the full human there. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I felt like I learned something about endurance and preparation for challenges of confronting that kind of an adventure. So we make space for all of that. And honestly, it's a different team to the team that I met when I arrived. And I know it's true because we've got a few newbies who've joined in the last few months. And the message is like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so glad I'm part of this team. And they say things like, I'm so excited to come to work every day.
And that's just wonderful to hear, because that's what it should be for brands like Vuyokazi and Spur. That's what it should be in head office. So look, I think that's a great place to call it. From my side, I think you feel the joy and play plus performance and excellence. I think you feel it in your brands when you experience them as customers. So I think it leaks into your system and it leaks into your customer, the context that you're creating at the center.
I absolutely love it. I feel like our customers are the most inspiring people on earth. I'm always on social media. I mean, we've actually been trending a bit because the customers at the Spur in Kenilworth have now decided to turn the Spur into their karaoke spot.
Okay, just starting to sync.
So there's this viral video of this kid singing his lungs out, but it's completely customer driven. Like nobody did anything. They set it up themselves. And it's just so exciting to see people turn this into their third place in the Spur context. And all our inspiration creatively comes from our customers. And there's so many more exciting things we have up our sleeves. And it's just a delight to serve these brands and to help them remain part of every family tradition for years to come.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on, for discussing innovation. We're very excited to see the other things that come out of all of your brands. For those of you who are wrestling with innovation in your own organization, Be Less Zombie is a really interesting read by Elvin. It's a very structured approach to how you can start experimenting and scaling innovation in your organization. Thank you again, Vuyo. It was a delight to have you here. Thank you so much for being with us. And until next time, happy reading. A big thank you to our headline sponsor, Innate. Next time you're talking to your financial advisor, ask them what platform they're using to manage the administration of your investments. If they say Innate, you can take comfort knowing they're using technology to work smarter and serve you better. Visit innate.co.za to find out more. A reminder to sign up to our newsletter to always be the first to hear about book reviews, interviews, and to get book discounts on great books from our book partners' exclusive books.